The problems in our industry, I believe, started when I came here in '93. I think the first project I worked on was with Police Officer.
Yeah.
I edited parts of Police Officer for
With Godwin.
Godwin Kote. God bless his soul.
So rest in peace.
Yeah. I think that every film industry globally has had these problems. If you look back at the beginning of filmmaking, you know, in the early 1900s, it was haphazard. Bollywood was haphazard at the beginning. If you look at Nigerian filmmaking and Ghanaian filmmaking, in fact, we actually started off quite well with I Told You So and those kind of movies. We actually started off well because there was a concerted governmental effort to put a system in place for us to make films. But every film industry is very haphazard at the very beginning. But what tends to happen over time is things are worked out. You have actors guilds, you have writers unions, you have, you know, creators creating singular voices to push policy that will make the industry stronger.
Yeah.
This is what happened in Hollywood. You don't need to be an academic to know this. All you've got to do is read a little bit about classical. And unfortunately in Ghana, this didn't happen. We have had this, Ghanaian media has always been driven by commercial interests. Look, let me give you a typical example. Right now, if I was to take off music videos off TV and take off this kind of conversation off TV, how much content do you think will be on television? Across the 100 or so channels which are on air? Not a lot. If you skip the channels right now, there's so many conversations like this. Why is this happening? When was the last time you saw a documentary that didn't have a logo of a company that has an interest in that documentary slapped on it? No one is really helping the industry in terms of, oh, this young man needs to go and do this. Let's give him a little bit of funding, let him get it done. We don't even have a system to sieve out young talent. We don't. You know, what really should happen is that some kind of funding, we come back to funding again, it's made available, small amounts of funding. That sieves out young people. You get the real talented people. Showing, you know, when we look at a lot of what you call chaff, within that, you will see amazing work from creative people, and then you can pull them in. But we've never had these systems.
NFA has never done something like that?
Oh, it's never been part of the system. I mean, from when I first arrived in this country, it was a difficult industry for young people to get involved in. As the level lowered with regards to costs of entry, equipment, and things like before, a camera would cost what would be the price of a house. Whereas now you can literally buy a camera, your phone, you know, would make a film. People have made films on, you know, on their phones. But there has never been a concerted effort to organize this industry at all. And you can't really blame, if you like, people like myself. As everyone has said here, it has always been people's commercial interests. It's always been like that. It's never been an issue of we need to grow an industry. And really, in order to put that in place, there needs to be policy and some kind of funding to do that. You mentioned rightly that every country has a local film industry. And when you look at it, if you look at South Korea and you look at China, you look at Nigeria, Nigeria's local film industry, if you like, was boosted by private sector. Because that is a very rich country. You can never compare Nigeria with Ghana. That country has 4 or 5 times our GDP. So it's not, you can't compare it. But when you look at other countries in the, you know, in the developing world, there are funds that are made available to young students, you know, people coming out of film school who can access small amounts of money to make stuff that we can then sit back as people who are in a position to give young people a chance to say, okay, this is good. Come and let's work together. This is good. Come and let's. None of that system has been in place in this country. It's always been everyone for himself, God for us all. And this is the situation we find ourselves. But I'll tell you something that's happening. Currently, like I said, the level of entry has lowered quite a bit. So you have a lot of young people making content, some of which people might actually think is accidental.
Yeah.
I'm talking about local content. And they're making stuff that personally, when I sit back and I look at it, I'm thinking, this is amazing because they think they're making a skit,
Yeah.
but it's actually very clever and it's fooling people into thinking it's real. This is something that slowly, have you ever seen the Blair Witch Project?
No, I haven't.
Okay, this was a film in the 90s,
No,
I
I
think.
haven't.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's shot with, like a really rough camera,
Yeah.
and it blew up. Had a very small budget, it was a horror film. And I'm seeing a lot of young people gradually using these, their phones and stuff. Eventually, they're making a lot of skits. If you go on social media, on TikTok, on
Yeah.
Likey, on Instagram, they're making, and on YouTube, this is where, you see, the film industry hasn't really died. What it's done, it has transformed itself to fit what is happening. Our industry changed because we had a technology change.
Yeah.
We had a distribution change. We initially had cinemas. And then we had, we had DVDs and VCDs and DVDs. And then we had television. Television never really got into commissioning.
Yeah.
Very few. I think only TV3 commissioned, like even dramas and stuff. Very few. And now people have kind of shifted towards making content for online.
Yeah.
Netflix isn't the only place you can actually make money. And a lot of these young people are realizing that. There are platforms online that you can create something. If it's viable, you can put it there and generate little bits of money. Plus the fact that you can have product placement and all sorts of things in your production. And believe me, there are a horde of young people in this country who have
doing
realized this and are doing this right now.
So would you say then that the NFA, for example, should now be shifting its attention towards some of these skits that young people are doing and finding ways to even give them some protection? And
That is where you identify talent. What the National Film Authority should be doing is pushing government to make some amount of money available to fund these young people who have been identified from these skits
Yeah.
and things and say, hey, come up with something. We have 1 million CDs that we can split into 5 or whatever. 200,000, go and make something viable. You understand? And these films, you'd be amazed, could end up at film festivals all over. One of my older guys who was with me at OM made a short film, Heroines. It's picked up an award, I think the 24-hour film competition. It picked up the award here, picked up the award in LA, and it's now being sent to Cannes.
wow.
And they did it in 24 hours because
Okay.
there was an initiative which was launched here to get people to make films within 24 hours.
Okay.
Right, so it is possible, but they could agitate for a bit of funding that's made available to these young people to make, not a lot, just a few films
Something
that
small.
can reach out there.
But you see, a lot of these, the issue you're talking about, that, well, maybe we've moved towards some of these skits and stuff and we should focus on them. When you go to some of these other countries and when you look at the top 10 movie industries in the world, from Hollywood to Bollywood to the Chinese film industry, etc., they also do some of these skits and they have them strewn across social media, but they still have movies that they produce and they still have people going into their cinemas to even watch these movies. Recently, Warai, one of our, he's the head of ENT News in the company, he showed us a documentary of the devastating state of one of our cinemas. That used to be one of the very popular ones. I think it was Roxy Cinema. It was in a very bad state. And we always only rely on, let's say, Silverbed, or we go to Westfield Mall. I think that's West Hills, that's what it's called, to go and watch movies. But we have some of these places, we never really maintain them. And so even if we have movies, actors are complaining that the Silverbed is too small for us to do a premiere, but we are left with no other choice than to go there. So beyond just moving away from, doing full movies to short skits, there are countries who are still producing movies and they have a cinema life there as well, and a culture like that where people go there all the time.
Absolutely, and I think Abraham basically hit the nail on the head. You see, because we tend to generalize or have a perception that film is only about movies, and it's not. as he's saying, the skits that you see, 5-minute, 15-second skits, and you know, and all of that content that you see on the digital space is about film.
Yeah.
And if you look at, we don't even talk about docudramas, we don't talk about infomercials, and there's a whole space that is there. So sometimes I think even we, the filmmakers, have put ourselves in a box. When you go outside, you'll find out that the different genres of films are there.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're only doing domesticated films, and husband beats wife, this one robber, this. That's all we are doing. Cheating on husband, this and that. We're not doing horror genres. We're not doing real comedy genres. We're not doing action, sci-fi. We've got all of this. And to tap it all is that you have a vibrant youth population in this country. We're not catering to preteens. Look at all the children in this country. Nobody has done any film for children, let alone for teenagers. What we have are films made by people parading themselves to be men when they look and sound like boys. So
Hold on to this thought, please. We'll have to take a quick break. We need to expatiate on this point that Oscar Provençal has made. And I'll let you come in shortly. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. Please don't go anywhere.